Hello and welcome to Differential Discussions. I'm Melissa,
And I'm Dave.
and we're back with another one of our Serous fluids.
Yummy. So pretty cool. Looking at this one from low power, not highly cellular. So first thing I'm noting.
Yeah, some
Um,
red cells.
Couple of smudges here and there. Um, and so a responsible tech will be kind of correlating with the cell count, making sure that it's in the ballpark of expectation. And we got some kind of larger cells, right? So perhaps lining cells, macrophages.
The good news is I don't see anything that's like really big and ugly yet.
Yep. So big, ugly, big like clumps, right? Nothing like that. So those are kind of like the scarier things that we might kind of look for in a pleural fluid.
Okay, I'm gonna back up to over here so we can start with these guys next to these fibers over here.
Yeah.
All right, so let's drop to 40.
All right, cool. So possibly like a binucleate, like a meso. I have to macrophage off to the left here. I need to get my annotation notes here.
You want to drop down to 100 first?
Yeah. Let's be responsible. Hi, red cells.
Well, we know the stain quality is good.
Yeah. So this is a good, yeah, that's a good QC check, right? So our red cells staining beautifully the way we expect, and then our nuclei and our nucleated cells staining like we might expect to. So that's good. So two monomax.
Yep.
Cleanup crew is in the house.
Yep.
Yeah. So some kind of a pycnotic, um, so tough to tell origin on something like that. Um, I'm thinking like a mono down in the corner there, and then maybe a lymph up here. And then we'll focus on this big fella here. So being multinucleated in the source, my initial guess is like mesothelial cell. So things that may look like mesothelial cells, malignant tumor cells and stuff, right, can look like mesothelial cells, mostly because of the origin, maybe, of the tumor itself. So I'm trying to look at the margins and stuff around the nucleus. And I wouldn't say that the cell looks amazing, but I'm not like terribly troubled by it. What do you think, Melissa?
I just don't like this here.
Mm-hmm.
The way the nucleus and the cytoplasm meet there.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm inclined to just call it a meso.
Yeah, right. So
Excuse me. So I might ask, if I were actually doing the diff, I might ask somebody else to just kind of peek at the cell too
sure.
and
Yeah.
just kind of see what they thought. Maybe even ask the path to peek at the cell just to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not perfect
No.
by any means.
We definitely look around and see what else we can see.
Sure.
But even this one cell, I might still ask a path to look at it.
Hmm.
I think there is another somewhere. Oh, there you are. Was it in? It's in. I'll pull it a
So
little bit
yeah,
more.
so like three nuclei.
Pull it out.
I think it's probably more common to see like two nuclei.
Yeah.
Three a little less common. Um, you know, I think some people might be troubled by some of the cytoplasm here. I'm less bothered by that. And I'm trying to really focus on what's going on inside. I think the nucleus look somewhat reasonable. Cell's a
Yeah.
little darker than I'd like, but
Yeah. I mean, it could be a reactive meso too, although usually the edges are a little bit darker.
right. Yep. So that my intuition is that this might be some kind of a reactive sort of presentation. But
Yeah.
yeah, anytime that you're uncertain, just involve others,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, we had the benefit. I mean, looking back at our experience, we're kind of spoiled where the path would just like walk through the lab, like several times a day. And if you can just pull them aside and get a look. Um, yeah.
Yeah, let's see what else we got here.
Automax.
Wonder if that was something.
Yeah. So we see some kind of an inclusion there. But tough to make out what it is.
Yeah.
And models are just really good at eating junk. So
Yep. Oh, not the direction. Let's go the other direction. Oh, here we go. Some more stuff.
okay. So I think this looks like a meso. What do you think?
I think there's too much cytoplasm for it to be a lymph.
Right.
I think it's too nicely packaged to be a monomac. And the nucleus isn't really doing anything exciting either. So I think a meso is as good as a guess as any.
Little dark coloration there, but that kind of supports some of the other I don't want to say changes, but other presentations of our mesos.
And it looks like there's some little blebs here too.
Yep, yep, which isn't unusual.
Yep.
And then just a note on its size too. So sometimes the cells don't really splat onto the glass as well as, and that might account for the darker colorations and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's kind of rounded up.
Nice little clump of nymphs.
Yeah, all hanging out together. Clicky limps. Ooh, a neutrophil up in the top right there.
Yep.
We can see a little bit of variation in the color of the cytoplasm, and of course, our, segments.
Mm-hmm.
That helps. Overall, pretty clean body fluid so far.
Yep.
Another neutrophil and macrophage. So you got a neutrophil up top and a macrophage. That's an M.
I think we're doing pretty good if the worst thing is our handwriting.
Oh boy.
Oh.
So this is where I think mesothelial cells and lining cells become very, very difficult, right? So I think there's a couple things that can cause the cell to look the way it does. It could be that it's sloughed off into the body fluid and has been hanging around there for a while and is just beginning to like degenerate. And yeah, it's possible it's a macrophage. You get these reactive histiocytes, right? Where normally our monocyte macrophages have like I would say like little coloration to the cytoplasm, but sometimes they can be very reactive and get this basophilia. Um, yeah, it's a tricky call.
Yeah. And the nucleus kind of being bendy like that,
Lends to being macrophage.
it does the coloration lends it more to the mesos that we've seen. And then I was debating about the cytoplasm. I think it's almost looking more frayed than blebby
Mm.
at the edges of the cytoplasm.
So fraying, what would you think that would
I'm leaning more towards a monomac.
yeah. So I think it's a reasonable to say that this is like a reactive kind of macrophage form, which may or may not be you might not actually distinguish that
Yep.
in your reporting, but yeah, I think that's reasonable.
It's like thinking about it compared to this. I think the coloration on the cytoplasm is similar, but
The new and you know, there comes a point where a meso will degrade to such a degree that, in my opinion, it's virtually indistinguishable from a macrophage.
yeah.
So there's a lot of challenge with this. Uh, Also, we should probably reflect on the clinical significance of making these two different calls, right?
Yep.
So how does the clinical team kind of react to it? And I would say generally it's of little consequence to the patient. We want to be right. I think all of us like being correct about the call. But yeah, it's just challenging. But this looks like more like a meso, right? Like
Hmm.
a yeah, pretty reasonably healthy one. Yeah. So monomax, right?
Yep.
Um, and a couple of limbs just kind of hanging out.
Yep.
And oh, so there's a dead red cell in there, huh? So um, cool. The cleanup crew.
Erythrophagocytosis.
Erythrophagocytosis. Fancy terms.
Fancy, fancy. Ooh.
Hungry, hungry. Okay, cool, cool. So, um, so this can be kind of challenging, I think, for newer techs. So we're looking at the inclusions inside of these cells. They are not uniform. So some of these are like bigger, smaller. So a lot of variation in size. That to me makes it much less likely to be some kind of an organism. Um, So not unreasonable to see colored staining like you're seeing in here with like ovoid and circle and for it to be yeast, but generally there'll be uniformity, right? So I think that this is more likely like a blue-black kind of granule. What do you think?
Agreed.
So as this particular individual has red cells have bleeding into the tissue space here in the pleural fluid. It could also just be inflammatory in nature. And when you have capillary permeability increase, it's not uncommon for red cells to make it in there. But red cells don't belong there. They will be phagocytized, which we have seen evidence of, right? So we had erythrophagocytosis, and then its constituent pieces will be broken down. Hemoglobin. There's pretty much not much else in red cells. And so you get these sort of siderotic kind of granules, right? This iron, and it kind of stains in this bluish, blackish, depending on the concentration. So I think that's probably the most likely explanation for those inclusions.
Agreed.
Neutrophil. Yep.
That's a really nice one.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice meso. Blebby. Nicely stained. Nucleus looks great.
Yep. I agree. Ooh.
A
So
meso.
it's a baso. So I might have made a mistake and called a baso a neutrophil. Whoops. But yeah, so I see uh I don't want to draw on them, but there are darker granules and they have a variability in their size. That's a big signal, right? It's a big signal. So run through the segmented white cells that are physiologically part of humans, so like, our white cells. And it can't be a neutrophil because of the variation. The color is off for it to be an EO, right? We're looking for, right? So you just kind of get left with Bezo is the kind of the best choice.
I think the coloration of the cytoplasm is also off for a neutrophil. It's way more of a darker purple color.
You are dead correct. I it's what when I talk about basophil color of cytoplasm, it's tough because it's like really subtle. And I think you need like a lot of time with these cells. But yeah, you are 100% right. Um, yeah, it's like purpley.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas we think about a neutrophil to have a pink with
Yes.
purple or lilac
Oh,
granules.
there's another one.
Another one. And I would also say a little bit of basophils in a body fluid like this and what looks like an inflammatory kind of condition is sort of reasonable, right? Like that's not a crazy thing to happen. Hear my dog barking at the mailman outside.
I can't hear
He's all bark.
it. Looks like an EO. Okay. Those granules.
Yeah, it's tough for me to make out.
It's not a nice looking EO.
Yeah.
Thing too with these limps, and then we got to move to the side. These limps, as they don't have like that nice bluish color to the cytoplasm like we're used to seeing.
Hmm.
But we got to take a look at this guy here.
Oh, sweet. You know, so I think different labs will handle this differently. This would be called a mitotic form. And I think oftentimes it's like a qualitative sort of a finding. Um, and yeah, so mitosis is normal physiology, right? But bad things do mitosis too. So yeah, honestly, kind of above our pay grade. It's something that we kind of note and you alert, and then we
Mhm.
pretty cool though.
Which for those first two mesothelial cells we saw anyway, I'd want a second opinion on them.
Sure, sure, yeah.
So, noting that there's also a mitotic cell would be helpful for the physician, the pathologist, when they look at it.
Yep. And so like I'd say Melissa and I are pretty darn good at these things. There's still a lot of uncertainty, and don't ever let pride or, get in the way of getting a review on things like this.
Mhm.
I think that's important.
Yeah. And there's no expectation that we know everything.
Absolutely not.
Really, our major role is to identify what's normal and what's abnormal.
Yeah, yeah,
And then as long as we indicate that it's abnormal and pass it on, that's really the most important thing.
yeah. And so the path is going to have the benefit of medical history and
Hmm.
so many other avenues of information, and then the um, authority to then do further testing or yeah. So
Or even to call the physician and say, hey, what's
yeah,
happening with this patient?
yeah,
If
yeah,
we did that, it would kind of, some physicians respond well to that and some
right,
are not going to. And some institutions frown on that and some institutions want you to do that. So it just depends on where you are. But the path has the ability to just call and talk doctor to doctor. And then the doctor's going to just be a little bit easier to talk to for a
yeah,
pathologist
yeah.
sometimes, just because the doctor might feel like, yeah, they're on equal footing.
So this might be one of those mesos that's like, ah. um, so it looks like it's all one cell. I don't know.
I can't tell, but I feel like the cytoplasm is a little bit junky or more frayed, kind of like a mono than
Mm-hmm.
it is a meso.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but these two are, oops, that's my big elbow. Sorry. These two are, can't tell if it's one cell or two. I'm assuming it's two, but it's hard to tell here.
It is difficult. So there's always a little bit of you're on like the knife's edge about a call, goes one way or the other.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, if you, you know, I still wonder, we've had like two or three cells that could have gone this way or that way, 3% one way or the other, and both normal categories for the
That,
source.
that's what I
Eh,
was just going to emphasize normal. If
yeah.
you're leaning towards in malignant or
Yeah.
normal, then no, that has to be really further explored. But if you're
Yeah.
leaning towards normal categories,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think so far, my intuition is that this is likely just like a reactive picture, but there's a reasonable amount of evidence for us to kind of kick this up the chain. So don't ever feel bad doing that.
yeah, I agree.
A lot of macrophages.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think overall, like a decent amount of macrophages, lymphs,
Yep.
a few basophils,
Couple mesos.
couple mesos, yep.
These look like kind of beat up macrophages.
Yeah. And that deeper, darker color is either suggestive of the things they're phagocytizing or like that reactive sort of picture.
Yeah. Okay, look, we're back to that cell. So I guess is a good place as any to wrap up this slide. So
Yeah, I think so.
thanks for watching.
Thank you for your time.